Okay, dear friends and audience, today I have brought a very interesting topic, rather current topic to you people. And this topic I am not simply going to deal with in current perspective. As you find the title, the present and the past communication series short video. I have consciously tried to formulate a short video because if the video would be overstressed, you people would not pay proper attention to the topic. In order to make you more engaging, attentive to the topic, I have decided to give you the short video on very current issues. But my friends, current issue is not, you can say, any specific information for you people. Because you are having the various sources, various sort of media information, journals, papers, electronics media for the informations about the current events. Yet the interesting thing is that this current event is not just falling down from the sky, not coming forth from the earth. All the current such events are the burden of history. Burden of history in that sense, in background, in history, our generation might have committed some mistake. And today we are supposed to make a repayment for such mistake. This is the one type of burden of history. Second type of burden of history is that certain thing occurred in certain situation, and this from this we have not taken a lesson, and once again we have permitted the event to be occurred again. It is on this basis you might have found a proverbial statement which I have discussed with you earlier in UPSC question paper. History repeats itself. But here I am not going to mention about this statement. Rather, today I am slightly differ with this statement because there is another scholar, Mark Twain. He has given a very interesting proverbial statement. History does not repeat itself but often rhymes. Often rhymes in Hindi you can say कि हिस्ट्री अपने आप को दोहराता तो नहीं है परंतु अपनी प्रतिध्वनि देता है. It is going to re-echo. Re-echoing is possible in history. So it is in this background, I just find two events very similar in nature, not very similar, to certain extent similar in nature. One event is the Cuba missile crisis in 1962. Another is Ukrainian crisis, the crisis in present Ukraine, of which you people are the eyewitness. What is happening in Ukraine, in what way you can observe on the TV, the news. The Russian government has deployed at least 1 lakh soldiers in the neighborhood of Ukraine. The military exercises are going on. It may be a prelude to the future war. The NATO countries became active. Even Canada, Britain, all have started to send their military arsenals there. USA is slightly serious. Blame game is going on. And it appears that a full-scale war might escalate in the region. So this event has just reminiscent of, that reminds us the similar type of event some decades earlier, that is the Cuba Missile Crisis. In what way the situation is comparable? In what way we can compare both the situation? In fact, today, if Russia has taken such an aggressive posture, we are not going to defend Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is definitely bossy in his nature. Sometimes he is even dreaming about reviving the old USSR posture and in neighborhood and try to revive the old Russian Empire, maybe. But presently, what sort of grudge he is having against NATO and USA? Just try to understand. He is having the simple complaint, why are you extending NATO in the neighborhood of Russia? In spite of the promises given earlier by NATO and American party, and particularly the British Prime Minister John Major, after unification of Germany, never NATO had to move east of German region. But why did today NATO has just reached up to the doorstep of Russia? Who is accountable for that? So this is the complaint, and this complaint has been lodged by Russian government time and again. It is on this pretext, it has even invaded Ukraine earlier in 2014, and just you can say annexed the region Crimea, and everybody knows about the tragic event. We cannot defend Vladimir Putin. He is having an aggressive posture. But just try to recall Cuba Missile Crisis. What happened? Cold War was on its climax. USA expanded in European continent. Communist Russia was just at the center of the American missiles or the missiles of NATO from all directions, from British direction, French direction, even the direction from West Germany, Turkey. So Russia was at the complete, you can say, on the focal point of American missile. On the other hand, USA was sitting outside, and you can say sitting the other side of Atlantic. It was totally safe because at that time, before launching of Sputnik, USSR was not having such a strong bomber who could carry the nuclear weapons, and after dropping over USA, it could have returned in time. The USA was not having such asset in the form of any, you can say, the military bomber at that time. Up to 1962, what happened? Cuba, here I am just, you can observe here the map. This is Cuba. It is just situated in the south of USA, possibly in kilometer wise, I am not recalling presently, possibly it might be 80 kilometers away, 90 kilometers away from USA, the southern tip of USA. So there you can say there was the rise of a guerrilla leader. His name was Fidel Castro, a very famous name in the history of the world. You people may know the name. So in 1959, or possibly some year back, before 1962, he just organized a coup against his own government. He was a guerrilla leader, and then toppled the government, seized the power. And the government which was replaced by Fidel Castro, this government was pro-American in its nature. But Fidel Castro at that time, he was not a hardcore communist, but he was having a pro-people policy. So naturally, he was having the anti-American stance. So due to this factor, when Fidel Castro came to the power, first of all, he started a program of all-round nationalization of American industries. Means ki USA could have at that time invested a lot of money in Cuba. So many factories, industries, and the several business enterprises were being run by the capital of USA. Fidel Castro could not tolerate this. He simply took the initiative and started to nationalize all such enterprises. So it was a direct challenge to America, and America could not tolerate this sort of protest from any Latin American country, because before that, here also you can underline the burden of history once again, because the story is not going to stop here. Just I will prefer to carry you some centuries earlier. There is a very famous statement and the famous doctrine, you might have heard the name Monroe Doctrine. What was Monroe Doctrine? Monroe was an American president. He was ruling in USA in 1823. At that time, European countries, in the history of Europe, you will find that the Metternich system was ruling the roost in Europe. Congress of Vienna had made some arrangement that was European Concert of Europe. And Concert of Europe was guided by a very conservative Prime Minister of Austria, Metternich. And it was the time including Cuba and many other countries, you can say, not Cuba, in fact, in whole of almost Latin American countries. These countries were Spanish colonies. And Spain turned to be weak in its nature. Making benefit from the situation, there was the rise of a military officer. His name was Simon Bolivar. He organized a liberation movement in Latin American countries. And after defeating Spain, he started to liberate one region to another. So it created some sort of apprehension even among European leaders, exclusively on Metternich, who was worried about the fact that once Latin American countries got liberation, so the idea of nationalism would be all pervasive, and this idea will come to Europe again. So once again, the people of different nationalities in Europe could rise in revolt. So for that fear, he was planning for dispatching an army from Europe to crush America, or the American revolts, you can say, the Latin American revolts. This decision was disliked by Britain because Britain was a bit liberal. Apart from that, he was having some economic interest in Latin America. This is another story. So here I will just avoid this story because it would be more time consuming. So Britain was having its own economic interest in Latin America. So Britain was not in a mood to giving support to any such program. So he opposed the move, but Britain was isolated, and Metternich and some other leaders took such a radical decision about Latin American colonies of Spain. But it was the time Britain just provoked USA, because after all, the USA was once its descendant or its child, so it provoked. So there was American President Monroe, and Monroe at that time thundered, Latin America is the backyard of USA, and if any outside power was going to make intervention into the matter of Latin America, so it was tantamount to intervening into the internal matter of USA, and USA could not tolerate this. It could not tolerate this. So this was an alarm to European powers. So European powers backed out. Metternich and other European powers simply backed out from USA. So in this way, it led to the liberation of Latin American colonies. But my students, if you are just going to observe minutely, you will come to realize that it was some sort of arrangement between USA and European powers. The European powers would not dare to go to America or Latin America. On the other hand, USA would not intervene into the internal matter of Europe. So it was, in one sense, a very silent agreement between the two. And USA started to follow the policy of isolationism. So USA could not, at that time, before the world wars, it didn't prefer to look towards the east of Atlantic. Rather, it preferred to look towards the west of Pacific. It was the condition of USA. But in the meantime, the situation started to change. So later, after the world wars, once again there was a changing in situation, and USA just came to play the active role in European politics. It is having some another story. Some other day I will brief this story. Presently, my target is to concentrate over the so-called Monroe Doctrine. So leave it, this doctrine here. Now, at the time of this Fidel Castro, when Fidel Castro seized the property of America, so America was upset, and firstly the American government just deputed its secret agency, CIA, to conduct a covert war against Fidel Castro. and if possible to eliminate him. So even CIA just took a lot of steps, even attempt on his life, but he was fortunate enough to save himself. But after that, he was having some concern. After all, he was picked up a war with one of the most powerful nations in the world, or you can say one superpower. So at least it should seek the support from other superpower. So secretly, this Fidel Castro made an approach to Russia. And there was a Russian president, that was Khrushchev. Stalin passed away and Khrushchev was the president. So he made an approach to Khrushchev. So it was a big opportunity for Russia, because America was already having all presence in Europe, just in neighborhood of Russia. But Russia was very far from USA. So once Russia got some, you can say, land, Russia at least got some, place in Latin America, just in the backyard of USA. So it was a very big opportunity for Russia, you can say. So Khrushchev positively, and Khrushchev responded very warmly. There was some secret arrangement was made between the two parties. And in order to save Cuba, USSR just carried some medium-range nuclear missiles to Cuba and installed the nuclear missile here. This is the, you can say, you will find here the site of missile site. So the missiles were just installed there. All operation was carried very secretly, but anyhow the matter was leaked to USA and particularly the Defense Department, and from Defense Department to Presidential Department. So John F. Kennedy was president. He thundered again, just like in the manner of Monroe. He revived the so-called Monroe Doctrine. He sent a message to Russia. After all, Cuba is the backyard of USA. And if any outside power is intervening into or trying to intervene into the matter of Cuba, it is just like intervening into the internal matter of USA. We cannot tolerate this. So remove the missiles from Cuba. He completely sent almost a very strong message to Russia. But Khrushchev retorted. He replied with a very strong worded, you can say, phrases. He told, no, we cannot remove them. Rather, we are going to install the fresh missiles in Cuba. You cannot stop us. Then USA gave the challenge, yes, if you are moving through Atlantic to install the new missiles to Cuba, so we will definitely resist you. We will not allow you to install the new missiles. So this created a moment of confrontation between the two superpowers, full-blown Cold War condition. Here the Russian, you can say, missile in Russian warships. The Russian missiles in the Russian warships just moved towards Cuba through Atlantic. And American warships they were lined up to give a push to Russian missile in front. So it was a situation of eyeball to eyeball confrontation. The whole world was put on hostage by USA. And it was a situation it might have resulted into a full-scale nuclear war. The whole world was stunned, and some of them today, thanks to today's world, the media was different. If there could have been today's media, they even started to show my people, this is you can say some sort of this is a proxy war, this is the war-like situation, here is the American missile, here is the Russian missile, if the missile will be launched by two powers, then what will happen to Atlantic Ocean? And they will just try to give an imaginary picture of the devastation in Atlantic. And I think many people simply died of the fear of what will happen. Thanks, it was not the days of such media at that time. So anyhow, confrontation, but it was very difficult, and no one was thinking on the plan that this situation might have been averted. But when there was the eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation, and Russian missile and Russian ship was just nearing the site, in the meantime, Khrushchev just passed an order, return your ship. So the Russian ship took just the U-turn and moved in backward direction. So the tragedy was averted. Even American president took a sigh of relief, American defense secretary. But after all, Americans were having a very sense of a strong arrogance, So it was simply an American arrogance that some of the journalists inquired the question and put a question to American defense secretary. What was the name at that time? I'm not recalling. It was an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation. So this American defense secretary simply replied, but it is not us, it is Russian who blinked. It is not us, it was Russians who blinked. मतलब हमने पल के नहीं झपकाई, रशियन लोगों ने पल के झपकाई. This was an American arrogance, you can imagine. Then Khrushchev wrote a letter to American President John F. Kennedy. If you are so much sensitive towards your security, how can you ignore our security? If Cuba is your backyard, Turkey is our backyard. East Germany is our backyard. And you have installed there the Jupiter missile. These are equally dangerous to us. And then he put two conditions. One, the Cuba would never be invaded by USA, and secondly, Jupiter missiles would be removed. It is another story. Anyhow, finally Russia removed the missiles from Cuba. So my student, this is reminiscent of the present event. And here you can see we are just going to remember the Cuba missile crisis at this occasion. Why? I am giving the explanation about that. Why you are just going to recall about the Cuba missile crisis. USA was so sensitive towards its own security, it could have put the whole world to hostage. This nuclear war could escalate at that time. And same USA and NATO are moving in the doorstep of Russia. Is it justified? Why USA is not going to recall its own days? And if Vladimir Putin has brought such a formidable situation today, we are not going to justify his case because he already, I have told you, he's bossy, he's having an invader's posture. He tried to revive the old Russian glory. All things are at the same place. But USA was a major culprit on this basis, on the basis of and on the knowledge of Cuba missile crisis, you can recall. Just put aside the events in 1962. It happened in 1962-63. Put this incident aside. Even today, if Russia would try to develop the military defense system with Mexico, will USA tolerate this? One story, just related story, I have to brief for you people. Before the First World War, USA was not a party to it. It was a war among European powers. But USA became a party to it in 1917. It joined the war. Although there are 2 and 3 regions. It is correct. But one of the regions was the German ruler William Kaiser developed the very close relationship with Mexico. He was ready to supply weapons to Mexico and he provoked Mexico to invade over USA. And all such informations and all such provocation was made through a telegram, and the British government just misappropriated this telegram and presented the same telegram to American government. So American government was so upset that it decided to participate in the First World War. So this is the double standard by USA. Today I am stopping here. You people, intellectuals, and you are yourself having interest into international politics and even in history, so just think who is accountable to what extent. Thank you very much. I'll see you.